What was your "I'm married to an idiot" moment? Story 1. On a camping trip, she was worried about parking the car on the grass because she thought the grass was going to grow, puncturing and flattening the tires. I bet her parents definitely didn't want her parking on the grass at home, and Dad made a joke like this and she just believed it. When I was in kindergarten, we were told to put up a show, and the teacher thought we would all look nice with lipsticks, even the boys. So she told us the lipstick is really poisonous to prevent us from licking it off. It goes without saying half of us forgot our lines while secretly panicking that we were going to die. Why do so many adults think that the best way to teach a child is to lie to them about things being poisonous? My grandma once told me the white part of the top of the strawberry was poisonous. Her logic was that she didn't want me sticking the whole thing, leaves and all, into my mouth. I guess instead I had a minor anxiety attack, legitimately thinking I was going to die soon because I knew I'd accidentally eaten some of the white part in the past. I was very young, but I still remember the horrifying feeling of just waiting to see if I'd gotten a fatal dose and would die soon. I thought I met the only one in the wild. When I worked for parking staff at a local Renaissance festival, I had a guy in a heavily modded lowrider complain that the spot I was directing him towards was on the grass, and it would pop his tires. He wanted to park in the handicapped, which was also on the grass. I told him this, and that he could either park where he was directed or leave the way he came. But the grass would absolutely not pop his tires if the gravel road didn't already do the job. He cursed, sped past me down the gravel road, parked in handicapped anyway, and apparently told management I cursed at them, which absolutely nobody believed. Some people's brains are just built differently, man. I had just accepted a job where my employer wanted me to relocate to Kentucky. I was in Bowling Green going to look at a few properties, and the very day I arrived, the city experienced a snow of 8 inches. This is a lot for that area. I went to get some coffee, and while walking through the parking lot of the local newspaper, I observed a truly remarkable sight. A man was lying on the ground using a windshield scraper to try and remove the accumulated snow from his wheel well. "What are you up to?" I kindly inquired. "Trying to get this ice out of here so it doesn't cut up my tires," he worriedly retorted. He showed a feeling of great relief when I told him he didn't have to do that. Story 2. My husband thought people whistled when they sent off fireworks. He didn't realize the fireworks themselves whistled, though that was one of his more harmless stupidities. Made me think of how I read once that when deaf people hear for the first time, a lot of them think the sun made a sound. I, a deaf person, often question this, to be honest. I've only seen this said by a deaf/hard of hearing person twice, I think. One was in an old children's book and one was on Reddit. Nobody I know in real life has ever said this. Probably because I feel a lot of people don't make this connection when they post stuff like this. For the majority of us, the first time we hear something with our residual hearing, hearing aids, and/or cochlear implants is when we were young children. We may not always remember our thought process when we get our hearing aids or cochlear implants. I know I don't remember it all because I was a toddler when I got my hearing aids. So if one did really think they would be hearing the sun, they were likely a small child. The one from a book was talking about when he was a little kid. Just your typical silly kid stuff. Most deaf adults have a basic understanding of sound, even if they don't have residual hearing or wear hearing aids or cochlear implants due to seeing what other people say about sound or respond to sound. So I'd be very confused if many deaf adults think this way. That's just my experience though. At the age of 55, my hearing impaired sister got decent hearing aids. Her first comment to me was, "Did you know turn signals make a noise?" Made me smile. When the gardeners started up with their leaf blowers, "What the hell is that?" and promptly turned her hearing aids off. Story 3. My boyfriend refused to eat the basil I had bought from the grocery store because it was a full plant. I was keeping it outside and he insisted that he would not eat dirty food. I asked where he thought farmers kept produce, and he said that they had special areas for food to grow that was sterilized. But my plant was not food grade. I just looked at him with a dumbfounded look. I didn't know how to respond. As someone who lives in a rural farming community, this has me laughing so hard I'm in tears. Please record him when you tell him we actually spray crap all over the field everything grows in. It reminds me of a 10-year-old me visiting my dad's farmer friend. I'd been on cattle farms before, but I was so happy when I pointed at something and was like, "What's that? Turd flinger?" Reminds me of a story I heard about my ex. She was overhearing a conversation between her then BF and his dad. They were talking about fly fishing. She interjected, "It's gotta be difficult. And what's the point of catching flies anyways?" My daughter, she was about 4, and I were at a market once in a pet store, and she walked up to a cage that I knew had mice in it, but she didn't. The mice were hiding, so she yelled out, "Look, Mom, pet flies!" So excited. She thought the flies that had gotten through the cage were pets to be bought and taken home. 5 years on, and it still cracks me up. Such innocence. Story 4. A girl I dated in college broke my laptop because she kept trying to get a USB drive in. Instead of, flipping it, she just pushed harder and harder until it broke my port and motherboard. Reminds me of a coworker from last week. IT was giving us new PCs, so a coworker decided to start unplugging all of the cables in the existing desktop PC, but couldn't get the DisplayPort cable out because apparently they didn't realize there was a little locking tab, unlike HDMI. So my coworker just kept pulling and pulling until the connector broke and part of it stayed stuck in the computer while the cable detached. My friend was once having the same problem trying to plug a USB drive into his laptop. Flipped it over, then flipped it again, and finally got it to work. I jokingly told him, "You always have to try it 3 times. He thought I was giving him instructions, so he rapidly unplugged it and plugged it back in 3 times in a row. Thankfully, no files were damaged. Reminds me of the time I was living with my uncle and aunt in the early 90s. My uncle was a little ahead of the time and was playing games on his desktop that used that caddy-style CD-ROM. Anyway, my cousin from my uncle's brother's side didn't know the difference between a normal music CD and the caddy type, just shoved the CD into the drive. Didn't want to go in. Just push harder. A relative is a minister and has married a couple of thousand couples. He spent the last 15 years of his career warning people if the ring does not easily slide on, the answer is not to push. Just put it on your spouse's hand and deal with it later. You can obviously guess the cause for the warning. One lady was bound and determined to get that ring on her new husband, and when it didn't slide on, grabbed his wrist with her other hand for leverage and really pushed. Dude started screaming and spent his wedding in the ER having the ring cut off and his broken joint treated. Story 5. I bought fresh broccoli and my husband asked why I got such a huge broccoli and not the normal smaller ones. He thought broccoli naturally comes in bite-sized florets. My husband was buying broccoli based on a good stock. He came home with this absolutely raggedy one that cost more than normal as it's by weight. He even knows we used the top. And yes, I'm aware that you can use the stock, but why on earth would you pick it based on the stock and not the florets? My wife was ill and asked me to make her dinner. She just got a bunch of asparagus and I asked if that would be good to include. So I cooked up the asparagus. I cut off the little rooty bits because they're roots. And I cut off the tops, of course, wouldn't want to eat those. I brought her food to her and she went, "Where are the tops of the asparagus?" The trash? My wife. I married a freaking idiot. I placed an online order with my local grocery store for them to shop for me, and I would just pick it up. When I got the groceries back home, I opened up the produce bag that was supposed to have my 1 crown of broccoli, and instead it had 1 little floret. It was so damned funny I couldn't even be pissed. I'll never forget the sight of that sad, forlorn solo floret of broccoli that whoever shopped for my order thought constituted a crown. My brother made dinner on one of his first few dates with his now wife. He'd never made broccoli before and thought they only had giant broccolis available at the store, so he bought 2 of them and cooked them both whole without cutting them into smaller pieces. She was so confused to see a big steak and an even bigger broccoli on her plate. Story 6. Found out she was eating half-cooked pre-made pot pies because she broiled every meal in the oven instead of baking it. She told me she hated that her oven burnt the top of each one and left the bottom doughy. She would eat the uncooked dough regardless. That reminds me of a guy that I dated who always turned the oven higher because he thought it would cook faster. He set a pizza on fire once, but it was still frozen in the middle. I know a lot of people who think that the temperature they cook something only means how quickly it cooks and doesn't affect the quality of the dish. Just put the oven/stove on high no matter what, so it gets cooked faster. My cooking idiocy when I first moved out was when something would ask for medium heat. I'd just turn the dial halfway on the stove and leave it there. Didn't matter what kind of pan or what I was making, I wouldn't adjust medium for the quantity of food or anything. I just threw away a lot of Big Lots pans that I burned the bottoms of. Story 7. My partner was grunting and groaning at the bin. He said, "We need new bin bags. These ones that you've bought don't bloody fit." Went over to see what was going on, and he had a roll of small black dog poop bags in his hand, with one unfurled, trying to work out why it wouldn't fit in the bin. There were bin bags. He just picked up the wrong roll, and instead of realizing, tried to get a dog poop bag in a bin 50 times bigger. I was cat-sitting for my parents, and on my way out I decided to be nice and empty the kitchen garbage for them. It was a pain in the neck to get the new bag in the can, but I did it. Got a call from my mother the next day asking how I managed to do what I did. I had forgotten that there was a plastic ring that went over the part where the bag goes to smooth it out, and it had fallen back into the opening when I was walking the full bag out to the trash. I had unnecessarily stretched the bag over the ring to put it on. Annoyed the entire time that the bag wasn't big enough. But even I, in my idiocy, know the difference between a trash bag and a pet poo bag. Story 8. There was this girl who kept faxing the same document over and over. Eventually, the recipient called to beg her to stop, but it keeps failing, she said. The document keeps coming back out. I used to work in a medical office, and the amount of dumbassery regarding the fax machine is staggering. I was once on the phone trying to walk another person through e-faxing, but was getting nowhere. I started to break down, thought maybe she wasn't even in the same window. Had missed a few clicks or something, and asked her where she was. In my chair? The issue was not resolved. The best I had was working at a law firm as an admin. I came across the head partner and a couple of attorneys gathered around the fax machine trying and failing to send a fax. When I got them to walk me through the steps to see where they were going wrong, I learned that the partner hadn't been putting in a number to send it to. He'd just been hitting send. Straight up thought the machine would just know where to send it to. Even when I was little, I understood the concept of the internet and emails fairly well, but once my uncle told me about that fax thing, I didn't understand what it was, and here was his explanation. Faxes are machines for sending paper over the telephone. Mind blown. A whole sheet of paper rolled up super tight, squeezed into that tiny wire, and it comes out on the other end? What is that, alien technology? Okay, I was like 6. I'm not sure what her excuse is. Not someone I dated, but someone I worked with. He would print his document to scan it, so he can have it as a PDF. When I showed him that he could save it as a PDF, I think I broke his mind. The guy was in his 40s, so not that old. Literally just had a conversation last night with my mom because she was complaining about all of the old paperwork piling up at her office. Every time she has reports that need to be attached to AP invoices on other receipts, she has to print all the separate documents and scan them back as a package. From there, it's stupid to immediately throw out the physical copy, so I hold on to it. I asked, does the company just not want to pay for the paid version of Adobe that lets you combine PDFs? Turns out she does have the full version. She just didn't know that you could do that for so many years that she's been printing, manually sorting, scanning, and filing this paperwork away. This is the sole reason my dad bought her a new printer when the office went remote during the pandemic. You don't know what you don't know. I frequently wonder just how much that might apply to something I'm frustrated with. More than once I have tried to Google a solution, knowing that there has to be one, but can't get anywhere because I don't know what the right word or tool name, etc. And then voila, I see an offhand comment on Reddit or wherever mentioning a tool name I've never heard of, look it up, and my world gets easier. A million sites sell the tool, but I didn't know how to find it. The same happened when I first heard the term gaslighting. It can be such a subtle manipulation tactic that it's hard to describe to someone else. I knew my ex-husband was screwing with my mind, but I couldn't describe it to anyone. Discovered the term and felt a relief and validation like you wouldn't believe. Now it seems people overuse it, so it will probably get changed. Story 9. She didn't know that a rhino and a rhinoceros were the same thing. She thought rhinoceroses didn't exist anymore because dinosaurs were extinct. I'm not gonna lie, I see where she's coming from on this one. I think the saurus part is what's conflicting with her. Sounds prehistoric. Or am I dumb too? It sounds a tad like saurus, which is probably part of it. It's just Greek, like most dinosaur names. Saurus means horn, as others have said. And it's the same sera in Triceratops, three-horned face, so you've heard it before in relation to dinos. Another fun Greek etymological root is in pterodactyl. Its name comes from the word wings and finger, ptero and dactyl. Know those cats with 6 toes? Polydactyl. Most people would think the word helicopter is split into 2 parts, heli and copter, but it's actually helico and Peter, or the Greek for spiral wing. I think we can thank Da Vinci for that naming. And he was Italian. What a nerd. It's the scientific name of the genus Rhinoceros, which we have no common name apart from the short form rhino. This is rare among contemporary animals, so it sounds prehistoric for that reason. And also because saros, horn, sounds like saurus, lizard. In other languages, it has common names. In Norwegian, we call it neshorn, or nosehorn. Hippopotamus and boa constrictor are other 2 examples of this. I met a woman in her mid-20s who thought they were called Spinosaurus rex. She was genuine in her belief of this until the group we were a part of laughed and explained it wasn't the case. My partner and I now call rhinos Rhinoceros rex as a joke, and we need to stop as we have very impressionable 2-year-olds. Story 10. My husband went to Dollar General for toilet paper. We had maybe $50 to last the week. This man came back with $40 of mango juice because it was on sale and no toilet paper. I drank the juice, but I was awfully salty about it. My husband went to the store for groceries and was gone for 2 hours. When he came back with 4 glass bottles of expensive organic lemonade and nothing else. That wasn't even the worst part. He went to the store that was almost an hour's drive away when he could have gone to the one a block away from our house. We were very poor at the time, and these things mattered a lot. Story 11. I dated a guy in college who visited me in my rural hometown and asked what the animals in the neighbor's field were. I said, cows? In a you must be kidding me level of disbelief. He proceeded to tell me that they can't be cows because cows are black and white, and these animals are all brown. I had to pull up Google to prove to him that brown cows existed. I could maybe understand if he'd been from a city, but he told me he was from a rural suburb, not a city, so I guess he was just an idiot. I grew up in a town with a minimum security prison/work camp. Think like a Cool Hand Luke kind of place. No fences or anything of that sort. It's out in the middle of the woods, about 10 to 15 minutes by car to the nearest town. Everything that isn't wood is farmland. Prisoners are all super low-level drug offenders from the city. They work for a couple of weeks or months up to a year and get basically additional credit for time. Anyway, my neighbor was a corrections officer there and said 2 guys escaped one night. They were so low-level the police were not even going to look for them. They just put a warrant out and they'd turn up when they turned up. Dudes made it through the woods about 2 miles to a field full of cows, didn't know what they were and if they were dangerous or not. Chose not to risk it and went back. Heard that story so many times I lost count, but it still makes me laugh. Oh my god, I sat next to 2 guys and one was explaining to the other that his girlfriend went on a run while they were in his rural hometown and didn't come back for a long time. She apparently ran into a few huge animals and was afraid of how to get around them. She was upset, and he asked her to describe where/what they were in case they needed to report it or something. They went to where she saw them. They were cows, but not black and white cows. In the army, there was a guy who just turned 18 and enlisted. He never left the projects in some big city somewhere and stayed home. Never traveled. When he saw some geese, he thought they were some kind of large domesticated bird or some crap and you can just pet them. Apparently he would use a BB gun to kill pigeons before they got bigger, so the geese in his mind were the result of that. Funniest crap I've ever seen. He had no idea what a chicken or a horse looked like. It reminds me of when deprived inner-city children were evacuated to the countryside in World War II and were shocked by the existence of farm animals. You might like this evacuee's description of a cow. The cow is a mammal. It has 6 sides, right, left, upper, and lower. At the back, it has a tail, on which hangs a brush. With this, it sends the flies away so that they do not fall into the milk. The head is for the purpose of growing horns so that the mouth can be somewhere. Under the cow hangs the milk. It is arranged for milking. When people milk, The milk comes, and there is never an end to the supply. How the cow does it, I have not yet realized, but it makes more and more. The cow has a fine sense of smell. One can smell it far away. This is the reason for fresh air in the country. The men cow is called an ox. Story 12. We served in the US Peace Corps together in Uganda. One day, it was really sunny out. Like, we lived within 50 miles of the equator. She says, "The moon is going to be really bright tonight." I asked what she meant, and she said since it's so sunny, the moon is absorbing all of the light and will illuminate brighter when it's dark. We argued about this and ended up talking to her mother on the phone. She confirmed her daughter's hypothesis. I had a discussion with someone on a date where she was saying how the full moon has a real impact on her body. I was skeptical, so I asked why would the full moon have an impact on her, and she said, well, gravity. You know how the moon affects the seas? It must affect the liquids inside of me, too. This sounded very logical until I asked, what exactly do you think is happening when the moon is not full? Where is the rest of the moon and its gravitational pull gone? Like, did she actually think the part of the moon that she can't see disappears? It is no longer there? It has no gravitational pull anymore? Lady, do you understand the moon cycle is literally the day/night cycle on the moon, and the illuminated part is just where it's day, and the dark part is where it's night? Do you understand the full moon is always there? My co-counselor in a cabin full of 11 and 12-year-old girls was a dingbat. She was super sweet, very sincere, but a complete dingbat. Around 1980, no internet, she would believe anything I told her if I said it with a straight face. Oh, I had fun with her. We had taken our campers on a canoe trip for the afternoon. My co-counselor, who I will call Liza, and many of our campers were pretty sunburned. At the dining table that evening, I made an offhand comment about everyone sleeping on the dock under the moonlight that night. Liza took the bait. She asked why we would do that. Well, the moon is the opposite of the sun, and the moon absorbs its light from the sun. Every time I get a bad sunburn, I lay out under the moon, and it'll make it heal faster. It works. Now, it is important to note here that this was all made up on the spur of the moment. Imagine a picnic table with 12 campers on the sides, and Liza and me at each end. And another counselor approaches the table. Mark hears me spinning the story for Liza and immediately backs me up. Yeah, it's a well-known fact that the moon takes the UV rays right back out of your skin. The sun burns, but the moon heals. That night, I only had 2 campers to supervise. The rest of them were lying out on the dock, getting their sunburned little selves healed by the moon with Liza. They were all amazed at how much it helped. Well, of course it helped. There was a constant cool breeze across their skin down on the water. If they got too hot, they would wake up Liza and jump into the cold lake. Poor Liza had so many sleepless nights that summer with sunburned campers. Don't worry, the water there was only about 18 inches, or about a half meter, deep, and we strung netting from pole to pole to keep active sleepers from rolling into the water. I may have pulled a few pranks, but I wasn't taking risks with kids' safety. Good times. Story 13. We were getting ready to move, and we were going through each room discussing whether to take or get rid of the furniture. In the bedroom, I remarked that I would like to get new bedside lamps. The ones that we had were from his bachelor apartment over a decade ago. He said, I can see why you'd like new lamps, but it's kind of amazing that the light bulbs have lasted 10 years. Dear gentle reader, the light bulbs had not lasted that long. He just was never the one to change them. An ex insisted that he always put his stuff away and that it was our roommates, me and whatever, that was moving stuff. I tried several times to point out him leaving stuff out, but one day his mom was visiting and he went around cleaning up his stuff. He came back from wherever he was and asked where his shoes were, and I informed him that they were in their proper place. To which he replied, "See, I told you I put my stuff away," and his mom agreed with him. Apparently his mom had been cleaning up after him his whole life and letting him believe he was doing it subconsciously. Oh hell, you just reminded me. We bought a new fridge with a water dispenser. 4 years after we bought it, my husband saw me refilling the dispenser bottle. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Refilling the chilled water dispenser so there's chilled water when you want it," quoth I. "But doesn't it refill itself? How would it do that?" "Well, from the pipes." At what point when we put this fridge here did we get a plumber to attach water pipes to the fridge? You know, that thing on the other side of the room, from the plumbing? I just thought it happened automatically. It got better. Turns out his son at 22 years old believed the same thing. He's actually intelligent, I swear. Well, he's lovely, a great cook, fabulous dancer, A tad lacking in knowledge of plumbing, though. Do you mean an entire fridge, like for food and everything? I've never even encountered one that had to be filled with water. Literally everyone I've seen with a dispenser on it had a water line run to it. Did you have it installed or do it yourself? I can sort of understand the thought process if it was installed and 2 and 2 literally never clicked together. How did you go 4 years without ever once having changed the dispenser in front of them? Story 14. While we were moving, my ex-wife asked me who we needed to contact to change our email address. Promise this isn't a bad attempt at a joke. This really happened when we moved to a new house in the same region of our state. We both had been using Hotmail at the time, which made this funnier. To me, at least. OP, I didn't read all of the responses, but there is some underlying truth to this one. I'm guessing you or your wife are not that old. Until the early 2000s, many people had their email through a local or regional ISP. I did change email addresses because of this a couple of times, and I remember some actually assisting by forwarding email. Gmail didn't come out until like 2004 or 5. And you had to have an invite to get it. Damn, I'm old. Story 15. My wife went to the store to get cilantro for our tacos. She came home with parsley. Easy mistake, they look similar if you don't look closely enough. I told her she bought parsley. She was convinced it was cilantro. I had her taste it. I showed her the tag on the bundle that said parsley. She reluctantly went back to the store to get cilantro. She came back home with another bundle of parsley. I love this woman, but at that moment I was questioning everything about her problem-solving skills. The good news is, she has never brought home parsley again. I did some dumb stuff like this before, for a job. If I recall correctly, I was buying salt for a bar and had to run to a corner store. Turns out, some of the salt was actually baking soda or flour, I can't recall. They looked identical and were one shelf away in the little gas station, so I was just trying to buy the bigger one. On the second trip, I actually brought more of the wrong item as a joke, so that when I came back, everyone had been waiting now through 2 store trips. I could get them with a little joke. My then girlfriend was meeting my family for the first time at Thanksgiving and wanted to contribute jalapeno corn muffins. She couldn't find a specific recipe, so we used a recipe for corn muffins with parsley. Where the recipe said to use a cup of chopped parsley, she used a cup of chopped jalapenos. My mother almost died. My then girlfriend was confused as to why parsley and jalapenos aren't interchangeable. They're both green, she said. Story 16. My husband was feeling unwell and began Googling his symptoms. After a while of silence, he suddenly turns to me in a panic and says, "I think I have preeclampsia." Okay, I'll be honest then. When WebMD first was a thing, I, female 35, immediately jumped on it and put in any and all of my symptoms. Well, as we all know, they always give you the worst case scenario. And it did. It said I might have testicular cancer. I called my parents sobbing. They said I was a waste of private school education and hung up on me. Now look, in my only defense, my older brother had gynecomastia. So in my head I figured if my brother was born with tits, then maybe it was possible I was born with balls stuck somewhere inside of me. I don't know, it seemed logical to me at the time. Story 17. Ex-wife. Complained Apple Pay wouldn't work or link or whatever. I suggested she contact Apple support or go down to the Apple store. Kept refusing to go to the store, saying she'd call customer support and go from there. One day while at work, she texts me asking where to get iTunes gift cards. Already a red flag. Why do you need those? I ask. She stated to me that Apple support is requesting the codes so they can verify funds. I told her it's a bad idea, it's a scam, and to just go to the Apple store. An argument broke out and nothing was discussed further. I get home that night and notice 8 $100 iTunes gift card holders in the kitchen. I asked her if she sent the codes to anyone in another argument that broke out. She said she posted in an Apple support thread and an anonymous user replied to her telling her to call this number. Obviously unaffiliated with Apple. Some say her Apple Pay still doesn't connect to this day. Had a coworker who worked late night shifts. They got a call about overdue funds. The main manager handed the phone to him. He said they requested various gift cards. At this point, I'm laughing at his story, right? No, he explains. He bought them all and cut them up after reading off the numbers and flushed them all down the toilet. I just stood there stunned. So many people fall for this that at my job there is a big bold word notice saying if anyone mentions gift cards on the phone, to hang up immediately. and underneath in smaller print a description of this scam. Story 18. We had a clogged French drain outside. My husband thought a plunger would fix it. He dropped the handle in the drain trying to plunge it. If that wasn't bad enough, he tried to use a wrench to get the handle out of the hole and proceeded to drop the wrench in the hole as well. He then called a plumber and told him we needed help getting a plunger handle and a wrench out of the drain. He has a PhD in English literature. Needless to say, I am now the handyman. My father-in-law has a master's in mechanical engineering. My father-in-law, until he got up in age, did the minor vehicle maintenance and taught my husband. The in-laws gave us their Grand Wagoneer when we had our daughter oh so long ago. Hubs told his dad that he checked the spark plugs. His dad said that it must have taken all day because when he did it, it was very hard. Hubs said, "They make a tool for that." Silence from his dad. My husband has since taught the daughter vehicle maintenance and minor repairs, and the importance of tools. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you would like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.